Believe it or not, Florida passed a compromise bill on gun reform in the wake of the Parkland shooting. So this surprised even me, because we've seen so much inaction after every one of these shootings that you think, okay, I guess this is what happens now. Well, they did do something, but it's a mixed bag. There's some good parts of the bill, and there's some bad parts of the bill. Some parts that are just meh, in my opinion, neither good nor bad, just whatever. So the bill has new mental health programs for schools. This is part of the bill that I would consider positive. I don't know the exact details of it, but any help you can give people on the mental health front is probably a good idea. The bill tries to keep guns away from people who show signs of mental illness or violent behavior. It extends a 3-day waiting period for handgun purchases to include long guns and bump stocks. So it used to be the case there's a 3-day waiting period, but only for handguns. Now they say, no, we're going to do that for other firearms and bump stocks as well. Bump stocks should be banned, and I think Trump actually, so one thing he did, which was positive in the wake of this, where they're beginning the process of getting rid of bump stocks. And the bill allows teachers who have a role in the school outside of the classroom, such as a coach or others with military or law enforcement background, to volunteer to carry a weapon on school campuses. So, you know, listen, if you want to, I don't think it's a crazy idea to have guards, for example, at schools. You want to have 2 guards or something at every school. I get it. I don't think it's going to be a cure-all. I don't think it's going to stop the all mass shootings. It could reduce some, though. So I don't think that's a crazy idea, and that's a right-leaning idea. Hey, let's have 2 guards at each school or something. But I think there was at Parkland and the shooting still happened. But either way, I think if you look at the macro statistics and you have guards, yeah, there might be a little tick down, so I'm fine with that. But I don't like the idea of, like, arming teachers. And they're talking about arming, not arming all teachers, it's arming teachers who also have some other role outside of the school, like they say coach, or they were formal law enforcement or whatever. Not sure, I don't like that one. If you want to get a few guards, fine, but if don't, because the teachers themselves have been like, no, we don't want to fucking be armed, you're crazy, do something about the guns. So I'm not the biggest fan of that. And I think, did I tell you the main part of it? Okay, one other main part of this is, I don't think I told you. They make it so that you have to be 21 years old, I think, to buy weapons. It was 18, now it's 21. Now, for me, look, you guys know my whole take on the age difference thing. I don't like how we have different lines for everything, you know? So it's like, oh, you got to be this age to drive, you got to be that age to join the military, you got to be this age for alcohol, and that age for tobacco, and this age for porn. Stop with the fucking different, just pick a clean line, whatever. Some people might disagree with me and say, I think that clean line for everything should be 21 or 20 or 19. Look, me, I think we baby kids for too long. I would draw a clean line at 16, and from 16 and up, in the eyes of the law, you're considered an adult. Okay? So everything from when you're 16 and up, that's when everything becomes legal. I wouldn't draw the different lines. So that's why the 21-year-old line, I think, okay, I see where they're going because this guy was younger and he did this shooting. But I don't think he shouldn't have been able to get a firearm because he was under 21. I think he shouldn't be been able to get a firearm because he's an insanely violent person who showed a zillion signs of what was happening. So he should have failed the background check if the background check had reasonable standards. But of course, the background check doesn't have reasonable standards, and they sold the guy a fucking gun, even though he was commenting on YouTube under his own name that he wanted to do a mass shooting. So that's not my favorite provision. I get it, why they're trying to do it, but I don't think that's a necessarily good provision. But either way, the fact that the state is doing that provision that's not controversial to me. You know, it's not the exact kind of gun reform I would do. I would do a universal background check. I would ban high-capacity magazines. I would do testing to treat guns like cars, so there's a process that you have to go through before you get your guns and all that stuff. But it's not controversial that they're doing it. I'm not necessarily for it, but they're allowed to do it. Well, guess what? The NRA stepped in and said, no, we disagree. And so they're suing. The NRA sues Florida over a gun law that raises minimum age to buy firearms. They're suing. And they're making the argument, no, this is unconstitutional. You can't do that. You can't raise the age. That's unconstitutional. What the fuck are you talking about? But understand something, guys. This is always what the NRA does. The NRA, so Dana Loesch did this thing on the CNN town hall where she's like, I wasn't in favor of this guy getting a gun. Nobody I know is in favor of this guy getting a gun. And so she's implying heavily, yeah, I'm in favor of universal background checks and, taking the guns away from guys like this. Well, guess what? The NRA is actually against universal background checks because they sued to defeat them. So they lie. They openly lie. This is what they did after the Vegas shooting. They're like, we're in favor of the government regulating bump stocks under current existing law, and the ATF should look into it. Wait, what? Why'd you add that last part? They added that last part because it was a trick. Because they didn't ban bump stocks under current existing law, and the ATF wouldn't be the ones to regulate it even if they did. So they added that last part to do a sleight of hand move to let you think, oh, we're in favor of doing something about this, and then they're not actually in favor of doing something about it. So they're tricking you. By the same token, when Dana Loesch implies we're for universal background checks, they're not for universal background checks. They fucking sued over them. And now Florida does the bare minimum in a compromise bill on guns. And they go, no, we're going to sue you over raising the minimum age because we think that's unconstitutional. What the fuck are you talking about? You do know what the Second Amendment actually says, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what the Second Amendment says. So it mentions a well-regulated militia. People love to ignore that part. They love to ignore that part. They go, I don't know. It says the people have a right to bear arms. It also says a well-regulated militia. So whenever people make the argument, God, you can't regulate firearms. It's a right. I always laugh because the word regulated is literally in the amendment. It's literally in the amendment. So yes, you can regulate it. And by the way, there's been Supreme Court cases about stuff like this. And the Supreme Court has said, of course, you can have basic regulations on guns. Even if you don't buy, which I don't know how you can't, the fact that they're talking about a well-regulated militia, they also simply didn't have the kinds of firearms that we have now back when the Founding Fathers were there. I mean, we're talking about muskets that take 2.5 days to reload. That's what they had at the time. So this idea of like, oh, they would totally be in favor of AR-15s being owned by people with paranoid schizophrenia today. No, that's not true at all. That's just totally and utterly made up. That's completely made up. So, listen, the states are allowed to do their own regulation on guns. This has been shown in court over and over. That's why you have states like California and New York with stricter gun laws. And, there are red states that have more lax gun laws. That's fine, but if those states like Florida decide, hey, we're going to do a few more pieces of gun reform, the NRA is just like, no, it's all unconstitutional. Any regulation of guns at all is unconstitutional. That's not true, man. Everybody's in favor of regulating weapons. It's just a matter of where do you draw the line? And everybody has a different line, and that's fair. That's, this is the debate that we're supposed to be having in the country as to where you draw the line. But you talk to, even people who are on the far right. Do they want Bob down the street having a nuclear weapon or a chemical weapon or a biological weapon or an anti-tank missile or a Gatling gun? Like, you go down the list, it'll be like, nah, a little too much. Okay, so you want to draw a line. You want to draw a line. Even if you lean heavily on the side of let anything goes, you still want to draw a line. Okay? By the way, it's the same as drugs. I say drugs should be legal, taxed, and regulated. You know what I say about guns? Legal, taxed, and regulated. It's the exact same thing. So I think drugs should be legal. That doesn't mean I think crystal meth or crocodile should be legal. That's a very terrible form of a certain kind of drug. And in the case of crocodile, it makes your skin fucking rot off. In the case of crystal meth, sometimes it's made with fucking nail polish remover and diesel fuel. That needs to be regulated. That specific kind is not going to be allowed. By the same token, you're not going to allow them to have a fucking Gatling gun. So guns, legal, taxed, and regulated. So when they say, hey, we're going to raise it to 21, they're allowed to do that as a state. But then NRA goes, no, unconstitutional, even though it's not unconstitutional. And they're going to get beaten in court. And if they don't get beaten in court, holy fuck, that judge is an idiot. So we'll see. But this is what they do, man. This is what they do. And, after all these mass shootings, they go silent for 6 days now. That's their play. The NRA is like, oh, shit, there was a shooting, we're going to hide. And it's because their argument is not resonating anymore. They make a bullshit argument after every shooting. More guns is the answer, always. But dude, we already have more guns than every other developed country. And we also have more shootings. So your argument is empirically incorrect. It just is. If your philosophy was correct, we would already be the most peaceful. But we're not the most peaceful, we're the least peaceful. We're the least peaceful because there are more guns here. So it's just a shame that whenever anybody does anything, the NRA immediately sues. And let me be clear about something. The problem is not your average Joe member of the NRA. The problem is the leadership of the NRA, because the leadership of the NRA takes a tremendous amount of money from gun makers. So actually, when you poll NRA members, they're not unreasonable. Most NRA members are for universal background checks, for example, with strong standards to back it up. So the members of the NRA are not bad. They're not, if you're a gun-owning citizen, you're not a bad person. It's that corruption rules the day here. And that's why you get a situation where they're suing. They're fucking suing over mild gun reform. I think they're going to lose. I hope they lose. And they're fucking ridiculous. And we need to get to a place now where these special interest groups like the NRA don't control our government anymore.